over to you first. Let me get your reactions. We have to talk about the match from last night.
Do we though? I mean, I still want to process it. I don't want to be prisoner of the moment and talk about it because my initial reaction is that's the best damn thing I've ever seen in this game. But when you sit back and truly bring it in, you're like, oh, wait a minute. In the grand scheme of things, that match meant nothing for the tournament. It was just basically a show match for what could be potentially a grand finals coming down the road. But yeah, just my initial reaction, wow, that went above the hype that was created for it.
I mean, I think my feelings are quite obvious towards it. You probably heard it on the mic. Brush, let me get your reaction here too.
Yeah, I mean, we were chatting about it before the stream went live. It's one of those moments where we all kind of thought maybe it could happen. Maybe someone could take on Starburst and bring him down. I just don't think any of us expected it to happen so soon in the league. I mean, again, as Popgun said, like, it's basically an exhibition match right now, and we're already getting that level of play.
For the record, you talk about that exhibition match, and let's talk a little bit more about the stakes here, right? We're in the week 3, and at this point, the stakes have been completely set. Let's take a look at those real briefly, actually. We'll see those updated standings from last night, where now we've got Alliance Rogue topping Group B, right there ahead of Starburst. And then, of course, Graveyard Shift was able to close it out over Penguin. But today, we close out Group A, where Jackpot and Crush Soda will be getting the head-to-head matchup up top, and Nightmare and Zero Deaths will be getting the bottom matchup, and we'll be starting with that Nightmare and Zero Deaths matchup. But of course, as we talk about our overall implications here, we can look at the playoffs bracket that is soon to come through here. And of course, now we've got an idea of what half this bracket looks like, Popgun, and we're going to fill in the other half tonight.
And let's just dispel this rumor right now, or maybe it's not even a rumor, it's more so of a joke that we've been having behind the scenes. Oh, now that Starburst lost to Alliance Rogue, does it make more sense for either Crush Soda or Jackpot to throw tonight so that they don't have to play them in the round that they want to play them? They'd rather play Alliance Rogue. That's not going to happen. First off, there's more than just potential seeding for just a 4-team playoff on the line. There's pride on the line. And I know we're going to show a video at some point where I believe it was Jared from Jackpot that was like, yeah, we don't really care if we lose. That's nonsense. Everybody wants to win against these kinds of teams that they're playing against right now. And when you see how Alliance Rogue played yesterday, are they really the weaker team? Do you really want to dodge Starburst to play them? They look like a completely different animal right now. So, yeah, it's the seeding. It doesn't really matter. You got to beat all these guys to get to the finish line of this tournament anyways. So it's going to be a great playoffs regardless of where the seedings lie.
To that point, I mean, Brush, I've been looking at these teams for a little while, and I think we'll see at the end of tonight, but there's a potential argument to be made that there has not been a time in recent memory where 4 teams at the top of English-speaking competitive Splatoon have been so close. And that point between Alliance Rogue and Starburst, which do you favor? When it's a coin flip, you don't want to play either of them here, do you?
No, what I mean, our lovely producer Spoon loved to show the graphic yesterday of, I mean, just all of us, Starburst down the line. And there it is again, though.
There it is.
Walkie and Nox, our Alliance Rogue favorites. But hey, I mean, it is that coin flip at this point. And I think what we're going to have to look for tonight and what we're really paying attention to is how close can these other teams get. We're getting to see them go neck and neck and them go head to head. And we've gotten to see them play Starburst and see them play Alliance Rogue. But when we actually get to the bracket and when they feel the pressure and when the stakes are there, talk about you want to win, you have that pride. I mean, some of these teams can show up and just be a different beast.
And that match is going to be a real nice preview of these teams that'll be heading into playoffs. Of course, we're looking forward to that Crush Soda versus Zero Deaths match second tonight. But first, we've got a matchup between Zero Deaths and Nightmare, 2 teams that were trying to prove themselves entering this league and have fallen a little bit short, but have got one last crack at it. Let's take a look and learn a little bit more about Nightmare and their team from their Team Spotlight video.
boy, it was a sweet dream, but now it's a beautiful nightmare as they punch their ticket into the Inktv Resurgence League, winning 3-2. And not the set they wanted, but it's the set that they needed to get on to this qualifying match.
Know that the ride or die. I keep waiting on my seat, boy. Know that the ride or die. I keep waiting on my seat, boy. We hustle, what the night. Waiting on my seat, boy. Know that the ride or die.
Hi, my name is Storm, and I'm the captain of Nightmare. I play more of a flex role. I play shot and splash mostly. I bring more adaptability to the team. I play a number of weapons like flex around and play what's needed for the team, and I support and pressure when needed.
Hello, my name is Miner, and I play the sloshing machine for Nightmare. I bring aggression and the most range on our team most of the time.
Hello, I'm Pelu, member of Nightmare. I play Splash and sometimes Nod for the team, bring cat pictures to the team.
Hey, my name is Joe. I'm the frontline for Nightmare. I play 52 in Tri-Slosh and a pocket machine, and I bring hyper aggression to the team, as you can see.
Nico is our anchor / support player, and he brings a lot of presence and he brings a lot of pressure to apply to the team. He's very good at like holding space and very good at keeping space.
Know that the ride or die. I keep waiting on my seat, boy. Know that the ride or die. I keep waiting on my seat, boy. We hustle, what? Know that the ride or die. These brothers, my guys, know that they fly.
I would describe our team as persistent. We never get down when we fall behind. We always keep our heads high and keep on pushing till we achieve the results we want. I feel like we, as players, bring something different to the table that many top players haven't seen before, and they're not really used to our playstyle yet, so I think we're going to surprise them with how good we're going to be playing.
Now that we qualified, we are hoping to show that we are capable of hanging with the best, especially having a massive mountain to climb in the tournament with all the teams here. We know we are the underdog, but we know we have what it takes to be amongst the top.
And Brush, I mean, they look like they can at least challenge the top, especially coming off of their match last week versus Crush Soda.
Yeah, and I mean, that Crush Soda game was ultimately a lost set for them, or a lost match for them. But they took that first set, and they looked strong. I remember on the mic, we were talking, we don't even know if Crush Soda had a shot back in that game, and we were surprised how quickly Crush Soda recovered. Nightmare, a very strong team, and fighting for the top. We're going to see them here against Zero Deaths.
And now we'll talk a little bit more about this Zero Deaths team Popgun, which has kind of had some rosters, shifts back and forth as they struggle to really try to find things out and, fully plan this one here. But tell me a little bit more about what to expect out of this team tonight.
Yeah, it's been a disappointing run so far. They haven't won a single game. Now, when you look at the fact that they played Crush Soda and Jackpot, it's like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. Those are some tough teams. The good news for Zero Deaths, though, is they did play in a tournament on Sunday called 4v4 Sundays and did really well in that. They finished 4th place, taking a game off Alliance Rogue and beating Graveyard Shift in a best-of-3 set along the way. So Zero Deaths, being a new team formed right before this league, trying to build up some synergy. Now that they're starting to play in some other tournaments, they're starting to get some things figured out. I think that's going to translate well tonight.
The more reps you've got under your belt, the better prepared you're going to be for a high-intensity, high-stakes match environment. And that'll be exactly what they're heading into tonight. Let's take a look at some of the statistics for each team as we take a look at the head-to-head comparisons here, where we're seeing Zero Deaths kind of lead a little bit more and pull ahead in both kills per minute and assists per minute, but it's Nightmare that's focused on staying alive and painting the map here, Brush.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at those red statistics, the ones that are favored. Having a full less death per minute there on the side of Nightmare, I know that's a stat that can be misleading, but it still is important to call out there that Nightmare keeping their players alive on their map, being able to wait for the opportunities and then move in. I don't even care if their kills and their assists are lower comparatively. They're staying alive, they're staying on the map, and they're putting paint down. That can lead to wins.
And to that end, right, it's even more important to do that when you're Nightmare, perhaps even trying to play a little bit more back, trying to play a little bit more passively, because for Zero Deaths here, Popgun, you're going to have a Tetra Dualies and you're going to have this ballpoint with an Inkjet trying to run straight for you.
Exactly, and that's why you see zero deaths per minute be so high. It's because they're taking a lot more chances than Nightmare is. Now, to Nightmare's credit, they know how to move quickly once they get those splats. So when they start killing those tetras, they're going to not just sit back and wait. They know that they need to strike quickly, but zero deaths being the more aggressive, as weird as it is to say in this day and age with how aggressive everybody is, that is why their deaths are so high, but they're going to take a lot more chances.
And the other thing too with those assists is that it looks like the full team is committing for those chances, right? You're seeing oftentimes more people on average get involved in taking some of those fights. That brings that assist number up slightly higher. So I think this will be an interesting one back and forth. Of course, both these teams known for playing with a little bit more pace, but let's try to take a look here at some of the comparisons between individual players. And today we picked out Phoenix versus Minor, the machine players here, and you can see some of their stats that come up on the screen. Of course, Phoenix did not get to play in qualifiers for Zero Deaths, but has started to play in the league starting last week. Brush, what do you notice here right off the bat?
Look, I mean, not playing in qualifiers and being able to jump straight into the league, that's a tall order. And to do that and still be showing up and still be playing as strongly as Phoenix has been able to, I mean, a full, almost nearly 2 splats per minute, that is a significant number. That means that you're staying alive, you're staying on the map, and you're putting in the work. You're finding those opportunities, opening those doors for your team to talk about pace and patience. Once those opportunities are there, your team's able to steamroll ahead.
And Popcorn, I mean, these numbers almost look identical for both of these players here, playing the same exact role with completely different players surrounding them.
Yeah, I was just about to make that point. You could just trade out those names. You could have told me those stats belong to the opposite player. I would have believed you. They're literally doing the same exact thing that their team needs to do. The difference is the rest of the players on the team obviously doing a little bit of different things. It's how they take advantage of that machine. Or how they utilize that machine that's going to be a little bit different. But yeah, both these players, just looking at the stats, very identical. What paint per minute for Phoenix is 0.94 higher. So you can't get much closer than that.
You really can't. 1 point per minute of paint doesn't make that big of a difference. But let's talk a little bit more about this machine's playstyle, I think, overall, because that's also something that I think is fully starting to get a little more solidified in the league, including with players like both Phoenix and Minor, but then also translating over to someone like Scar for Alliance Rogue, Madness, who we'll see compete later tonight for Jackpot. It seems like it's playing more of this cleanup and chip damage style Brush, and I think a large part of that's got to do with the range that's available to this weapon.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that all of these players have been able to play against and know how to deal with. And that janitor style from the rest of that team really makes a difference in that pace. You know, I know that's a key word I've brought up a couple times now. I know we've said it. That range can really do a lot in terms of where you can be on the map and how you play around it. And so even though we have this limited map pool, these maps can get flipped on their head and these teams can find themselves in completely unrecognizable water just because of the weapon swipe.
See the full rosters on your screens now, and of course we'll know the players that are competing later today. We believe it's going to be the main roster for Zero Deaths. That means Jay will be out, and then frankly I actually don't even know who Nightmare is going to send in. We'll probably wait for confirmation on that one. But Popcorn, the other thing I want to talk about here, and something that's a point that I think has been an issue of a lot of discussion, are this ballpoint, right? The ballpoint Splatling coming out and starting to rise in popularity in Japan. We're also seeing it come out on occasion here in the Resurgence League. We expect Storm to be playing that weapon for Zero Deaths. What makes this thing so strong?
Because the kit that it has, and now that Inkjet's got a little bit of a buff, it makes it even more sensible to add it into the comp that you already have. Also, all the E-Leader players seem to have gone extinct, so the natural predator of the ballpoint doesn't exist anymore. It seems like it's more free to go out and use that thing. And yeah, you're going to see Storm obviously using it for Zero Deaths, but as the game progresses, I feel like you're going to see more and more ballpoint play come out. We saw Jackpot I believe, use it last week as well with .q in certain situations. So it's, as somebody who uses Splatlings in general, it's nice to see a little bit of weapon variety other than the 1/4 of the time where it's Splasher Machine.
I mean, you get your custom jet sculpture too every once in a while, right? It's a little dessert, a little treat. You saw the maps on your screen there a moment ago. Those have been locked in. Zero Deaths lost the coin flip, and Nightmare elected to ban Rainmaker away, with Zero Deaths selecting the order of Tower Control, Splat Zones, and Clam Blitz here. Brush, with Nightmare banning Rainmaker, what does that speak to you here?
Look, I mean, we always like to say a commentator bait that Rainmaker is a fast-paced and volatile mode. Wanting to get that out of the way and say, we're not even going to go there, really speaks magnitudes to these teams wanting to play clean and collected. You know, again, even though with that janitor playstyle that we're talking about, being able to calmly make plays, stick to the playbook that they know, and not have to make as many on-the-fly chances, mean that these teams get to play the game that they have practiced at home, that they've spent the weeks grinding and working on. Nothing coming up for them that's going to be unexpected here.
To that point, I know I personally and a lot of folks behind the scenes here on the talent team have been incredibly impressed with Nightmare's ability to coordinate their specials and make those decisive pushes to actually move in and actually get some considerable work done on the objective. And perhaps Popgun here, they're just feeling less confident with the Rainmaker selection. But to hand it over back to Zero Deaths, they are going to be starting, of course, Tower Control, then going over to Splat Zones. I imagine Splat Zones, especially with these Tetra Dualies trying to get behind that objective and constant chaos in the back lines, could be exactly what Zero Deaths is looking for playing that set twice.
Yeah, and you might get to that set with Zero Deaths already down 2 games to none. I saw Tower Control being the first mode. I thought, okay, Zero Deaths didn't win the coin flip because there's no way they would play that node against Nightmare. Nightmare has been embarrassing some really talented players, both in the league and the qualifier, in Tower Control. So yeah, by the time you get to that Splat Zone set, hopefully Zero Deaths is still in it right there. And if Zero Deaths finds a way to win that Tower Control one, they're going to smooth their way right through that Splat Zones one as well. But that first set is going to be critical for Zero Deaths to keep themselves in line.
The other thing I want to talk about too here, talking about this first set, maybe it has the potential to go either way, but let's take a step back and look at the big picture here. If Nightmare starts to take that first game, maybe, I mean, this is general tendency for any players, not just Zero Deaths, but in general, they might not be feeling as confident in themselves, Brush, as they would be if they're able to walk away with a set victory up first.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the stakes already, and being in an opportunity here to measure up, even if it's with the bottom 2 teams here, is really important as you move forward and you start looking at eliminations. Wanting to understand where you fit as a team in the greater high-level scene is really important to these guys. And scrims don't always give you all that you need to know. You don't have the pressure. You don't have the live stream. You don't have whatever Nintendo Switch Online DC Connect issues because you've got 2 spectators in the lobby to deal with. It's a different environment. I'll cross my fingers too, K-Bot. It's a different environment. It's a different world. Measuring up in an environment like this just is a different thing.
Yeah, and to that end, right? I mean, I will say it's a different environment, of course, but at this point, Popgun, there's nothing to lose for these 2 teams. You might as well lay it on the table because you don't have to, you don't have to worry about disproving anything here, certainly, right? With no other postseason opportunities for these teams left.
Yeah, but you don't want to go down 0-3 in matches in this. There's a lot of pride on the line for both teams. Nightmare being one of the teams going into this league, some other teams felt like, hey, you don't really belong in here with us yet. You're not a part of our club just yet. Versus Zero Deaths, some of these players have been a little bit more established for a longer amount of time. They don't want to be the team that loses to Nightmare either. So it's a lot of pride on the line for both teams here. And that counts for a lot, considering, well, they've already been eliminated from the playoffs. But this is a great opportunity for them to further get their brand out.
Yeah, and to that end, right, we've made numerous comments about Nightmare having incredible signs of potential, 0 deaths. I mean, obviously, to qualify into this league in the first place, you gotta be a pretty decent team to start, right? You have to have something well going for you to make your way through that double elimination bracket in the beginning of April. And obviously, they were able to do it back then. We'll see what they can try to do now. But first, I want to get your put you two on the spot here. Predictions for the first set. Maybe we can throw up the predictions graphic as well while we discuss this for the match, because this one's pretty split amongst the entire caster desk. But I want to know, for the two of you, who do you have in tower control in how many games?
Top Gun, give it to me.
I'll take Nightmare to go 2-0 in the first set, but I'm going to take 0 deaths to win it over the course of 3 games. I really question Nightmare's ability to close out a team when they got them against the ropes. We saw them struggle against that last week, and with 0 deaths experience that they've gained in some of these other tournaments, I think that's going to translate well over the course of the whole thing. But I think Nightmare starts this one off 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, Nightmare having that first game win over Crush Soda that I mentioned earlier, clearly they know how to take a first set. They know how to get it moving. But, you know, Popgun, you and I are both 0 deaths believers here, so I'm 0 deaths all the way. I think a 2-1. I think that's totally a safe piece.
We'll see what happens as we get into our first match tonight. It's Nightmare and 0 deaths, and covering you on the mic will be Fusion and Rissa. We'll send it over to 2 of them for the call.
Thank you so much, K-Bot, for that lovely introduction. And thank you so much to our analysts for giving us a great rundown of the set we're about to watch. I think we're actually going to head straight in pretty fast. Fusion, I know we talked about this a little bit beforehand, but who do you have winning this set entirely?
I have Nightmare winning this set. Nightmare has certainly impressed in their matches so far in this in the league. Especially last week against Crush Soda, taking that first set in very impressive fashion. I think, certainly, like the analysts are saying, they have a lot of potential. Although they're probably less practiced and less experienced than 0 deaths, I think they could possibly pull through.
I totally agree. I mean, this is so, like our prediction showed there, like it's so torn, and we've seen really great results coming out from 0 deaths recently, so that's really showing that they've been grinding and working together. But Nightmare, there's just something about them. They consistently have that really good team play, and definitely have that underdog scenario where you don't think, you know, that they might necessarily be the team to win it, but they just consistently seem to be having those little bits of life and showing us that they can do it.
Yeah, they've certainly been leveling up recently, and I think the extra practice against teams of this high level is showing us and these players that they can do it. They certainly have been improving mechanically and showing that they're at very similar levels to the rest of this league. I'm kind of curious what we're going to be seeing out of this match, because 0 deaths has also kind of been meta definers in their own right. After being the only ballpoint player in like the entire world for so long, Storm on the ballpoint has inspired people to pick it up and run it, and people are realizing how good a main and how good a special that Inkjet can be. And having a like semi-anchored comp like that is not the most common thing nowadays. I think mostly teams are opting for anchorless comps at this point, but we may be seeing a return to those comps in the near future. But we'll see if 0 deaths is going to be the one to do the best with that, with the technology they have pulled out.
I know, I'm just thinking about that ballpoint too, and I've been seeing it so much in scrims, I've been seeing it so much in tournaments. Players are starting to play it consistently. And then thinking about 0 deaths comps, I'm really wondering, against Nightmare in particular, we know that Isabel, that Tetra, does mainly play Tetra, but we've seen her switch over to Wiper a couple times. That's another thing that I'm going to be looking out for going into this, if that is going to be a weapon switch up we're going to see moving forward against Nightmare specifically.
Yeah, I think that Wiper could certainly be very good. Wiper has a unusually good matchup into almost every shooter in this game in that it can space every shooter out while having more range than it. So it is a very solid pick into it. That Torpedo, not going to be the most useful against all of the shooters that Nightmare will throw out, but I'm expecting to see a few buckets as we go into tower control on Mako for our first map. We do see that Wiper come out, and a couple of those buckets coming out from Nightmare. I don't actually think they've run double Machine before. I think they've mostly been running Machine and Try. So we'll see if that extra Fizzy and extra Booyah Bomb will serve them well here.
That was my same exact thought too. I have not necessarily seen them run that double Machine, double Splash. Starting out here, Zero Deaths is instantly taking mid. We saw from Isabel's point of view, she was leading that charge paired with Storm's Inkjet there, and they are not hesitating. They are taking the tower, they're taking this right stack, and you can see they're setting up to get past this first checkpoint very nicely.
Yeah, the tower rolls into that first checkpoint. The dynamic duo of Isabel and Storm over on that left side, trying to keep people back. Nice kill is going to continue to force Nightmare into their spawn. The tower is going to roll into that second checkpoint as a full wipeout comes onto Nightmare. And this is looking like all Zero Deaths at this point. They're just going to continue rolling the tower into that final checkpoint. Zero Deaths is just continuing to move it forward. Nightmare needs to find an answer. They're just trying to stop the tower by any means at this checkpoint. They get an indirect hit. That's going to stop the tower before that last checkpoint gets taken. And just barely, they're going to hang on to some momentum here.
I was on the edge of my seat there, like Nightmare just needed to at least get over to that left side to stop the tower and put pain around it. That's exactly what they were finally able to do. And now they're able to take mid, but there is Storm with yet another Inkjet, consistently showing us that how good Inkjet is right now paired with that ballpoint. So even though Nightmare was starting to get into mid, starting to get a little bit of momentum, Zero Deaths is right back into mid and completely shutting down any momentum from Nightmare.
Yeah, and Nightmare is trying to get back in onto that right side with the Crab Tank, but all of Zero Deaths is going to just back up while that is going on. Nightmare is looking to find some stray picks, but Zero Deaths is not giving them any answers. Phoenix and Toyoben are just helping the other members continue to push up, clear out, and Zero Deaths is just maintaining such good paint control all across the map. It feels like Nightmare just does not know how to get in against a team as well coordinated as Zero Deaths.
Yeah, Zero Deaths just seems to consistently know what positions they need to be taking. We keep seeing them instantly taking that right stack. They're instantly taking that top left, and they're not hesitating when they do it. And I think that is really, really slowing down Nightmare and not letting them think about even moving. Finally here, we're starting to see a little bit of signs of life from Nightmare. They know that there's someone down on this bottom right side. They're able to take on that 2v1 and put a stop to that. And as they're able to get onto the tower, they're at least able to take down Storm. So let's see if they can make something happen with this little bit of momentum that they have.
And as you say that, two members go down. They just get snuffed out on that left side. Phoenix doing a good job locking it down, trying to maintain control around this right stack. They're not quite able to do so against two members of Nightmare coming in. If there's anything about tower control, it's that it's not over. No matter what lead you have, especially on small maps like this one. But Zero Deaths has just been lights out up until this point. Nightmare is going to need to make a move if they're going to want to get in, and that will have to start with taking out this anchor, this Storm on the ballpoint. They're just continuing to stay alive, farm those jets, and just get away, get out of reach, hover above anyone who's there to stop them. And there's the pick on the ballpoint as something seems to be getting started for Nightmare.
Nightmare finally able to start pushing up. Joe here is taking this left side, but does need a little bit paint to move around. Thankfully, he is able to paint for himself. Now we see Joe here focusing on the left side and Pelu, but they did have a member go down. I didn't necessarily see what happened. They were at least able to clear that first checkpoint though, so that is going to be good for them moving on in the last minute of this. And there are two members down on the side of Zero Deaths, 3 members down now. This might be that momentum that Nightmare needed to get to that third checkpoint.
Yeah, Joe's up in this oh so important top left. Once you get up there, you can get in between the spawn and the checkpoint. That Booyah Bomb's going to continue to stall the tower, get through the most difficult checkpoint on the map. It's going to continue rolling, but two members are down. Nightmare just trying to hang on at this point. They get a huge push, but that's not enough for the lead. Zero Death manages to get back in time, and now the pressure is on for Nightmare to make a move as the time hits 30 seconds.
I saw it was just Storm up there left for Nightmare, and Storm was just painting around trying to get that, I believe, tri-strike ready. and just trying to get it ready to make something happen for their team as we go into the last 20 seconds of the specials coming out from both sides. We saw that tri-strike come out from Storm. We see Isabel using this hammer, does get a pick on that, and with 2 members down on the side of Nightmare and so much yellow paint in mid right now, it doesn't look likely for Nightmare to get to this tower. There goes a Booyah Bomb as well. Storm does everything he can to get onto the tower, but there's that Booyah Bomb, that GG Booyah Bomb to completely stop that. And Zero Deaths takes game 1 of set 1.
Zero Deaths did look really good that game, straight out the gate with that massive push all the way down to 10. And while they looked so commanding throughout like that entire game, Nightmare managed to nearly get back a lead. It felt like they just kind of snuck it in at the last moment, despite Zero Deaths playing so well and looking so stable throughout the entire match. I think Isabel, like as we kind of mentioned before, was just shutting people down, spacing people out with that wiper. And that's kind of what Zero Death seems to be doing. They're mostly just playing a keep away game against Nightmare here. They're singling out members who try and approach alone, and it seems to be working out for them.
That's a good point to bring up. This almost reminded me of the way that I've been seeing Starburst play. They just got a really big lead. Zero Deaths got a really big lead initially, and then from there they knew that they could just hold ground, hold areas of the map, and that's exactly what they did. They knew that they didn't necessarily need to push any further than what they already had, and they just played really patiently and really safely after they got that really big lead.
Yeah, and while it felt like they were playing defensive, I feel like they weren't playing scared at all. It felt like they were popping specials defensively. We saw the Inkjet come out a lot. We saw some crab tanks as well as the Booyah Bombs come out at important times and just stalling Nightmare in mid. And it's, if Zero Deaths wants to finish this set out and maintain all the control they've had so far, they just need to be very careful about those little openings, because that 1, 2, 3 down situation nearly cost them the game. So if they're going to continue to look as strong as they are, they were that game. They are looking good for the rest of the set, but we'll see what happens on our next map on tower control.
We will. And thinking about the next one too, Nightmare, you know, that first game, they definitely showed us that little bit of signs of life there, having that initial push to get past that second checkpoint, I believe it was. So as we go into the second game, maybe Nightmare will know what they did wrong, what they need to do differently against this team. And as we look at the comps coming out here, Zero Deaths is going to be running the same exact comp from that first games. However, on the side of Nightmare, same comp, but Joe actually switching over to the Tri-Slosher from that machine.
I'm a big fan of this. What do you do against weapons that just stand and run around a lot? You miss them. Stop them in place, and it also comes with a very handy Inkjet. I think that can certainly help them out in terms of team composition. And Zero Death's trying to get this tower moving very early as they only have 2 members up. This may be a bit of an odd play here, but Isabel's going to make the most of it. That hammer comes out, gets a pick on that left side, gets a second one, and now that's 3 down. Zero Deaths is looking to get something started as Phoenix moves up on this right side.
Both teams started really aggressively there, and for Zero Deaths, their aggression paid off there. Now, Storm getting 2 picks with that Inkjet and just continuing to get picks, gets another pick with that Inkjet. Storm is just doing absolutely amazing with that Inkjet consistently. And with Phoenix sharking here on the plat, there are members up on the bats. You see Isabel there sharking on the bats area. Zero Deaths is just continuing to get points on the board and hold this space on Nightmare's plat.
Ooh, very good pick coming out from Pelu there. That was a huge pick. That hammer would have gotten multiple had it stayed alive in that instance. But Pelu is going to continue to help clear out the plat for Nightmare, but multiple members of Zero Deaths are filtering back in through those super jumps. It's going to be difficult to fully clear out the tower, but Nightmare seems to be solidifying some control. Something I wanted to point out, I've really liked how Zero Deaths has been playing. It feels like they're playing very conservatively when they're trying to push. We saw Phoenix sharking in the ink about like halfway between the spawn and the tower, just kind of letting the tower move forward and inching themselves forward to just give themselves a safe, consistent push moving up. And I think that's kind of pretty, it sums up kind of how Zero Deaths has been playing. They're moving up very safely together, just holding their ground and making space for the tower without directly holding forward, and it's been working out so well for them.
great points to bring up. I mean, we're seeing exactly that here too, with Isabel holding this bats, members on the plat area just trying to juggle the tower. We see Toyaba there, was trying to hold the plat, did go down there, but with 2 members in the bats areas going down, they, at least we saw exactly what you talked about there. They were just holding areas. It almost seems like they set up a wall just to make sure that they don't push up further than that and feed more than they need to. Now, with 3 members going down on this side of Zero Deaths, Nightmare here is doing everything they can to get back into mid, and as we see from Joe's point of view, using this Inkjet, 2 members, actually I believe that was 3 members, go down, essentially a complete wipe onto Nightmare, and once again, Zero Deaths here. They're playing so well together, they have that synergy, they're once again pushed up into Nightmare's bats.
Yeah, we saw that Inkjet coming out from Joe, but they're not nearly as much of a sharpshooter as Storm is with that ballpoint. Isabel locking down the bats yet again. The Wiper being a little bit of a ledge goblin, getting the pick. The tower's going to continue rolling forward, but they're playing extremely cautious. Yep, now that the crab tank's ahead, they're going to move that tower forward, but they're content with just staying alive. That's a massive push. They have total control of this game so far. Nightmare has so much trouble even getting out of their spawn, and they get a couple picks, but unless they fully clear this out, they're in for a world of trouble.
Yeah, the longer Zero Deaths keeps the tower over on this side of the map, the harder it's going to be for Nightmare to even think about pushing the tower. That tower hasn't gotten into mid here in quite some time. It's just consistently staying over on Nightmare's side of the map. So as we see the tower slowly resetting, Zero Deaths knows that we don't really need to push forward more than this. There's about 1 minute and 10 seconds left of this match. We're just going to continue playing that really cautious way. I love that Phoenix is just knows there's a crab right there and just sharks it out, just is like, I'm not going to show myself to make sure that I don't get splat by this crab. Throughout all of that happening, there are members down on the map, and it's quite a scramble here in mid as Nightmare is trying to do everything they can to get to the tower. But with 3 members down, it's just Pelu left alive, sharking there, trying not to go down as well. Nightmare is once again in this situation where they have to figure out how to even get into mid to even get to the tower.
What the hell? Every time we see Storm take a single shot with an Inkjet, he gets a kill. It's like 75-80% of the time he shoots a shot, they die. It's insane. And that's just kind of, man, just such efficient usage of the specials has been really like emblematic of what Zero Deaths has been going for here. Nightmare just struggling to get in. The crab tank finds himself in an awkward position, and that could be a big mistake as that's a delayed full wipe on to Zero Deaths, but they still have a lot of checkpoints ahead of them. Nightmare needs a lot of space if they are going to win this here. The crab tank pushing up onto the bats, gets a single huge pick. Now multiple members of Nightmare are moving forward in overtime. Joe gets a huge pick. They're trying to clear out some more space. And GG specials are offline. There's no Booyah Bomb incoming. A super good snipe with the Inkjet. The tower's going to continue rolling forward. The second checkpoint is now down, but looks like members of Zero Deaths are going to be filtering back in. There's a flank on mid. It's Isabel. Isabel's trying to get around the backside. Does Storm see that coming? Isabel's unable to hit the tower yet. There's more jumps coming in, and they get on the tower just in time. Zero Deaths manages to clutch it out, but boy, that was a close one.
Oh, that was so close. It literally got down to within 7 points of them taking that game. Nightmare just, they wait till they get these 1 openings, and they really know how to push those little openings that they do get. But unfortunately for them, paired with Isabel's flank in mid and the other members of Zero Deaths coming forward in front of the tower and pinching that completely, Zero Deaths was able to completely shut down what Nightmare was doing.
Yeah, I mean, we could kind of see a lot of signs of Nightmare showing like those signs of brilliance that they had shown against like Crush Soda before. But tower control, despite being perhaps the mode that we expected them to do the best on, they were still locked out for the majority of the time by Zero Deaths. Now, that was an incredibly interesting set, and if you want to learn more about it, the analyst can talk you through it. I'm going to toss you guys back over to the analyst. We're going to break it down and talk about what we can possibly see in the upcoming set.
It's 2-0 for Zero Deaths in the first tower control set, but Popgun, Nightmare almost had us in the first half of overtime.
Yeah, and that's how they've been playing tower control. That's how they've been winning games across this entire Resurgence League, including the qualifier. They just get 1 home run push, and that's all they need to win. The problem is Zero Depths dominates the other 4 minutes and 50 seconds. And they just completely take over the entire game. It built up this huge mountain to where just one home run push isn't enough to get them over the top. It comes down to Storm's inkjet plays. It's not just the fact that Storm's landing those directs. It's where Storm is taking off from those inkjets. It's such a safe spot to where they have no hope of bringing them down. And they're just dominating the field from that entire midsection just with that inkjet alone.
And Brush, so much was working well here for Zero Deaths for a great part of most of the games. We saw back and forth here and how much time Zero Deaths was able to continue making this, and a few beautiful shots here from Storm. When we saw this live, we commented that doesn't happen about a month ago.
No, and I mean, a lot of that comes down to the weapons that these teams have picked, and we hinted on it earlier, but seeing that ballpoint come out was so refreshing from where we were, so different, and it completely changed the pace of this game. We weren't anymore looking for the shark that leads to a 3-down wipeout situation. We were looking at that special coordination. We were looking for those inkjet plays, finding the opportunity, pop that special, and get room ahead of the tower. And finally, we were looking at these beautiful coordinated movements. Zero Death and Nightmare both had those moments, but Zero Death gets more of them. They get the tower farther. That's how you win 2 games.
And again, Popgun, here's that push at the end. So much looked like it was about to work pretty well, including this inkjet that comes out of Joe, but it's just not enough in the end.
Yeah, and they're in great positions. They know how to take advantage of small windows that are presented to them. The problem is now you have to win 2v1 fights and you can't die in the process. Just losing one player, and then all of a sudden you get pincered from behind. By the way, Isabel getting through mid, great heads up play there, saying screw all this nonsense. You guys attack from the front. I'm going to do this long flank. And by the time we get to the tower, there's going to be just enough time left to collapse on it and stop it out there. So yeah, Nightmare, again, showing flashes. And I have a lot of concerns going into this next set because I still feel like that was their best chance to get the leg up in the set. And now it might be too much of a mountain to come back on again.
Isabel on that wiper, something to look out for here. We'll see if she decides to switch back to the Tetris. We'll go rapid fire here. Brush, starting with you. Prediction Splat Zone set here.
Look, I mean, with this kind of gameplay, I'm expecting a 2-0. I really want to see that flip. I want to see, my prediction play out here. So I'd love to see Nightmare get their head back in the game, sit back down, find the 2-0.
Popgun, thoughts here?
Unless they make some sort of adjustment, maybe bring out an extra crab to try to knock down those inkjets, we're going to see more of the same. I agree, 2-0.
All right, setting it on back to Splat Zones. Here's Rissa in Fusion for the second set.
Thank you so much, K-Bot, for that lovely introduction again. So as K-Bot, Brush, and Popgun mentioned, we are headed into the second set of this series. And as we see here on the screen, gonna be headed to Splat Zone's Hagglefish first. Fusion, do you have any thoughts about the way that Nightmare can play this a little bit differently, maybe, to play it better against Zero Deaths?
Well, I've been enjoying Rapid Deco recently, and this is a very good inkjet map. You can jet over the sides, peek over the wall, and get some very cheeky picks. So that's something Nightmare is going to have to keep an eye out for. But in addition, this is Splat Zones. The game can be over in the blink of an eye if you're not careful. Nightmare has been making comebacks 5 minutes into the game, but unless they can survive that long, it's not going to matter here. They're going to have to use probably the tarp with some crab tanks, I think, if they are going to want to clear out the zone. They're going to need to play pretty aggressive and careful as we move into this first game of set 2 on Hagglefish Splat Zones.
Looking at the comps here, we see no changes over on the side of Zero Deaths, but on the other side, Nightmare actually opting to take out that Neo Splash from Storm and change it into a Vanilla Splash. So gonna be using 2 crabs. Popgun called that one perfectly. There are gonna be 2 crabs for Nightmare, and I think that's great for Hagglefish. So as we see from Pelo's point of view here, Nightmare is using a crab initially here to try and take the zone, but neither team has a member down. They're both just using specials right away to see what they can make happen.
Yeah, that Inkjet over the left side is going to damage that Crab Tank, not enough to kill it. Nightmare takes that early lead as both teams continue to fight in mid here, neither one getting a super big advantage, but Miner on this left side gets a very good kill with the positioning. They may get a second, they get cleared out. It's a 2v1 situation. Nightmare is still in the middle of the map as Joe is just barely hanging on, and that's going to be enough to give a jump back in, but it may turn into a stagger as Zero Deaths and Toyoban continue to clear out the middle of the map.
Toyoban here using this crab very aggressively, completely slowing down Nightmare from coming out of their spawn. But Pelu said, hey, I have a crab of my own, and is able to use that crab right away, paired with his Booyah Bomb to enable Nightmare to push forward and start taking their plat. Pelu able to get a really nice pick onto Isabel and push forward, and Nightmare able to at least cap the zone. Even though they essentially have 3 members down, they at least were able to get that cap and give those penalty points over to Zero Deaths.
Yeah, but Zero Death has yet again looked pretty commanding so far in this game. They have that Crab Tank online, but Nightmare is going to have to make a move. Toyoban pops that Crab, trying to clear out the top right. They kind of find nothing there. Pelu moving over into the top with Crab yet again. This has happened the exact same way the last time. Now Pelu falls onto that low ground. Isabel is still under the tent. Pelu's going to have to find a way in, but somehow Zero Death goes 2 down here. Nightmare manages to find some picks very cleanly. Storm tries to stop it, but now another jump in. It's going to turn that into a stagger, and Nightmare is looking the best they have so far as they try and set up their first hold of the game.
Nightmare finally able to get control of the zone, have no penalty points, and start pushing up to start pressuring Zero Deaths. Unfortunately, Joe there pushed up a little bit too far and was called out by Zero Deaths. The rest of the members of Nightmare are pushed back, and as Miner, I think, was actually trying to use a Booyah Bomb there, did get called out, but the zone is still in Nightmare's favor. They are counting down points right now. You can see the remaining members knew, okay, just paint the zone. We can maybe get lead here. They didn't quite get the lead, but they did get pretty darn close. And essentially with 2 trades happening on the board, Zero Deaths is able to come forward and get the zone for themselves. But Nightmare definitely had those signs of life there in that push.
Yeah, and I think certainly those Crab Tanks are definitely helping clear out some of the longer range members, especially those Crab Tank. Storm of the ballpoint doesn't find anything there. The Booyah Bomb's going to let Phoenix stay alive, or sorry, Toyoban stay alive, and that means that Nightmare is going to come in very cleanly. Another jump comes out. Nightmare takes back the zone without too many members, without any members going down, actually. So now they have quite a bit of paint control as they try and clear out this left side, but they drop onto that dynamic duo of Isabel, Storm, and Phoenix there over on that right side. That's not much of a duo, for there's 3 of them, is there? But Isabel trying to move forward with that hammer as Zero Deaths solidifies yet another cap.
Miner and Joe there had pushed up a little bit too far without any pain, and were able to get called out very easily by those members of Zero Deaths. But talk about a flip around here. Nightmare able to push forward and cap the zone throughout all of that. And I love Storm is making sure that he's painting up the sides, paired with Miner there trying to hold that left side that we see. So Nightmare does have a member down, but they're getting through their penalty points. They use this Booyah Bomb and this Crab to try and stall out members of Zero Deaths, and it does work for them. 2 members are down on Zero Deaths, and Zero Deaths is really having to figure out how to regroup right now as the lead has swapped over into Nightmare's favor.
God, we saw Isabel on a huge flank there, but they caught Isabel out at the last second, and that's going to stop that potential flank from losing them the game. The Crab Tank on the high ground is going to paint the zone. Will it be enough? Members go down, but not in time. Nightmare strikes back and gets a game from this second set.
Ooh, that was really back and forth, and it seemed like Nightmare had to figure out a little bit throughout the beginning of that how they needed to play that differently. And whatever it was, it definitely worked for them. Maybe it was that double crab comp that they needed to shut down the members of Zero Deaths moving forward. I'm wondering, Fusion, what you think. What did Nightmare do there differently to be able to win that and turn that around?
This match felt a little bit strange. Well, certainly they pulled out the double crab here. I think that certainly helped them deal with the Inkjet, but there was just so much of that kind of rinse and repeat. Like we saw the crab coming out from Zero Deaths, like on the right side while they're holding, and then the crab comes out from Nightmare on the roof, and they push them into the left side, and then they have to back up, and it just kind of felt like Zero Deaths just wasn't quite caught up to this new Nightmare just yet. I feel like they were trying to figure out ways around it, but they could not totally space it out the way they did in that first set. So we'll see actually if Nightmare changes anything coming into Flounder Heights, because while this is certainly a Tri-Slosher map, I'm wondering, it's certainly a Tri-Slosh and a triple Ink Strike map. I'm wondering if Nightmare is even interested in switching after that game.
That's a great point to bring up. Essentially, usually you see the machine players, for the most part, switch over to that Tri-Slosher. So with the way that that game went for Nightmare, I don't know if they'll switch up that comp that they had there. And then on the other side too, I'm wondering if Zero Deaths, having that ballpoint, having the wiper, I'm wondering if they're going to stick with those weapons as well. Typically, you see the long-range players switch over to short-range weapons for Flounder Heights, but I mean, it's Storm on the ballpoint. I could see Storm definitely making that work for Flounder Heights.
Yeah, something like strikes could certainly go a long way to helping your team get back in. We'll see what teams bring out here as we go to the tallest map in the game. We do, in fact, see that Splash Neo coming out on the side of Zero Deaths and a Splash Neo on the other side, as well as that Tri-Slosher from Joe, which we've been seeing from him quite a bit with that Soda. Both teams are just going to continue to move up into the beginning of the map as Isabel looks for an early flank on that side.
See Isabel trying to flank, but we also see Joe flanking as well. And that flank was actually called out on Joe there. Zero Deaths knew to watch that flank. That was really smart because you know that your member of your team is doing that, so we know that we need to watch that flank as well. And as the members of Zero Deaths tried to take advantage of getting that pick onto Joe, Nightmare here is able to step back a little bit, shut down the members of Zero Deaths from pushing forward, and keep these zones juggled as they had initially gotten that zone back.
Oh my goodness. Stormy yet again. This is a very difficult Inkjet map. There's so many corners. You can't always hit everyone. Storm changing targets at the last second there and getting a huge payoff with a pick from that. That's going to be key in terms of locking Nightmare out here as Joe tries to sneak into the middle of the map. As they try and sneak by Phoenix, they're able to tap the ballpoint, but that's not enough. Joe trying to get into the zone along with those triple Ink Strikes. That's going to let them move up. Toyoben gets a very nice trade out of that situation. That's going to let Zero Deaths continue to hold. Now Nightmare, staggering a bit, is going to be stuck into their spawn as Isabel pushes them even further against the ropes.
Isabel is just pacing this so nicely. She's just pushing forward, but then pulling back a little bit and just really faking out these members of Nightmare who are just trying to get back to their zone at least. Nightmare just knows they need to at least get to their zone to cap it. But with the members of Zero Death here just sitting here guarding, Isabel sharking, paired with Storm's Inkjet, they are able to take down three members now of Nightmare, and that is a complete wipe. Zero Deaths taking that game too and tying up the set.
Sheesh. I can't do the voice. I wish I could. But yeah, Zero Deaths looked very dominant that game. Once they got locked out, Nightmare was unable to get back in, and that's going to take us to game 3 of set number 2. Nightmare needs to win this if they want to stay alive. Both teams fighting not for a spot in the playoffs, they're just fighting for glory at this point. Neither team wants to go 0-3 in the league, so we'll see if Zero Deaths is going to be able to close it out here. We see this like dynamic duo coming up from Storm and Isabel. We see the Inkjet chipping people. They're not able to entirely focus on the Tetra. Isabel's able to force them while they're out of position to either look at her or die. So it's just a difficult situation all around, especially on Flounder, which is an entirely uphill map if you're trying to get back in. But that's perhaps one of the most polarizing maps in the game. I think people have a lot of opinions about that map, so we're going to be going to a much more well-regarded, I'd say, map in general in Mako Mart to finish off our Splat Zones set here.
Headed into Mako Mart, and just thinking about these last two sets we've seen, I really don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, that last game was very, very dominant for Zero Deaths, but like you said, Fusion, you know, it's Flounder Heights. It's just kind of an interesting map, and if you don't know how to play around it against a team that you might not necessarily know how to play around, it can definitely get a little bit hairy, like we just saw. So Nightmare maybe going to be thinking more reminiscent of what they did good, the weapons, the comp that they had for that Hagglefish game, and try and utilize that in this Mako Mart game.
Yeah, I certainly think that extra paint that the composition from game 2 pulled out was certainly useful, as Nightmare is going to go back to their what I think was like their tried and true going through the qualifiers and into round 1 of the league. Joe on that 52 gal, we see 2 splashes and a single machine coming out from Miner on that bucket, and this seems to be working out for them as Joe moves in with an early pick. That splash wall certainly going to be the bane of several members on Zero Death's existence here.
I was instantly thinking, oh, that gal is going to be consistently flanking around, and that's exactly what Joe showed us there right at the start, able to get 2 picks onto members of Zero Deaths. But Zero Deaths, they were able to get 3 members down onto Nightmare, and the last member of Nightmare having to back up completely to regroup with their team. Now, this is looking kind of like that tower control game we saw Zero Deaths play on Macomart. They know that they need to take that right stack, and they know that they need to take the left side here, this left drop, and that's exactly what they're doing. They take their position so fast. Isabel actually sharking up here on this top left. Nightmare able to luckily call that out and get that pick, and paired with 2 other members actually going down a complete wipe. Nightmare able to shut down that setup that Zero Deaths had there, push in, and get the zone.
Yeah, the sort of rinse and repeat play style that Zero Deaths has been having, it certainly worked out for them in the past, but they knew exactly where Isabel was sharking. They knew where everyone on the team would be, and Nightmare was able to clear them out here. They just need to be able to survive the onslaught of specials coming in, the Booyah Bomb, the Inkjet, the Ink Strikes coming in. It's just an absolute bloodbath, but only 1 member on each side goes down. Joe tries to get a shark out and unable to find anything, but it seems like Nightmare is still coming out on top of this fight here. Storm and Joe battling over on that right side as the 2v2 situation. Toyoben comes in to try and help, but they're unable to get there in time, and now it looks like Nightmare is actually going to be able to solidify that control. The jump is dead in the water, and Nightmare has a huge advantage here for the first time since game 1.
Nightmare here having the huge advantage and also taking the lead for themselves, so they are doing a great job here. Pushed up there, knowing that these specials are coming in from Zero Deaths. They know that they need to avoid them. They might even have to give up the zone, but they have to be really careful here as all these specials are being thrown at them.
Yeah, Pelu on this left side, a very well-timed grab tank's going to let her live, and that's going to help Nightmare maintain that zone there. They do get the penalty apply, but they still have a lot of paint in the middle of the map. Isabel just scoots on by, getting 1 pick and a 2nd pick, but they're unable to get behind the entirety of Nightmare. Both teams have been doing a great job at calling out flanks, not getting full wiped to silly plays like that.
Miner, I'm watching Miner there just sharking on the bottom right side of the map. You can see that Miner takes one side and Joe takes the other side of the map for Nightmare. Nightmare here getting their points all the way down to 15, and there was this moment here they backed up. They knew that, hey, it's okay if we give this zone over to Zero Deaths. They have the specials to come in right now. They have the paint to come in and the members. Joe actually sharking there and able to get a really nice pick onto Storm. Takes another member down with them, and that is actually completely shuffling Zero Deaths right now. They're having to completely regroup as Nightmare took a great advantage of that shark and is pushed forward with the zone again.
Oh my god, that flank from Joe kind of scared me because he was sitting there, and then you flank and you're like, okay, now's the time to go, and then it's a ball point, and they're just scooting around and strafing at like 20 million bajillion miles an hour, and you miss the first shot, and then you're like, oh no, it's over. Isabel trying to do the same thing, but they call her out yet again. Storm stopping them here. Nightmare's giving jumps back into the zone. The Booyah Bomb's going to force that, or sorry, the strike's going to force the Booyah Bomb to come out early, and Nightmare is going to hang on, get that zone, and take us to a game, a set 3 for only the 2nd time so far in this Inktv Resurgence League, which is massive. And I think Nightmare and Zero Deaths may take this all the way to the final game. How are you feeling about Nightmare going forward, Rissa?
That was awesome. It's great to see them adapt and really figure out on the fly what they need to do against Zero Deaths. And it seems like once they were able to just enable Joe's sharking abilities, because Joe does a great job at sharking in a spot and then getting picks. Joe just consistently has been doing that throughout this Resurgent League. So once they were able to figure out how to utilize that and play around that, it really worked out good for them.
Yeah, and we are going to throw you over to the analyst in just a second. I can hear the steam coming out of K-Bot's ears. I'm wondering what he was feeling when the double machine, double splash-o-matic came out on that Hagglefish Zones game. we're going to hear from K-Bot as well as the analyst in just a second here.
Fusion, don't get me started. Welcome back.
He's
to
right.
The Analyst
He's
Desk,
right,
folks.
Bison. Fusion was right.
Oh, Fusion, just don't get me started. We're back here, and hey, look, Nightmare is forcing us over to a set 3, the opposite of the modes that we were predicting. Brush, give me your reaction here.
Look, I mean, Nightmare taking set 2, obviously it means they're still in it on paper. They get to go to that set 3, but it doesn't mean they have all the cards. The momentum is now in their favor, but it's not the 2-0 easy set win that I think they wanted. Going down and having to fight their way through makes it a lot harder to take this third set and take it as easily. They're not smooth sailing like I think the final set in a lot of these matches feel like they are. It is still a dogfight here as we move into Clan Blitz.
But Popgun, the other thing I want to talk about here is Nightmare adapting a little bit over the course of that set with multiple different looks we saw out of them. Of course, we saw this double splash, double machine composition, ends up winning in game 1. But beyond that, for this Mako game with Joe going back to that, returning to that 52 gal, it seemed like it worked a lot better for Nightmare to be able to enable Joe to get in and not play the more traditional quote-unquote meta kind of a style.
Look, if it works, it works. And if you're getting destroyed and lit up by an inkjet, let's bring at least one extra crab out to bring it down. I said that's what they needed to do. And well, as much as you might not like it, understandably so, the results speak for itself. Now, here's the real question for Nightmare though. And I alluded to this previewing this set. Can Nightmare close this one out? Yes, Nightmare's racked up a lot of wins throughout this whole league. Most of their most impressive wins have come in a loser's bracket of a qualifier. There were best of 3 sets, though. This is where they need to put their foot down and establish themselves as a team that has learned over the course of this league how to close the team out. I'm still picking 0 deaths, though.
Well, we'll get to those predictions in just a moment. But look, the other thing here too, right, is that there's something to be said for Nightmare looking into this. As I was watching over their qualifier games, it looked like you just saw a little bit of that inexperience, a little bit of, you know, that lack of an ability to actually stay calm, cool, and collected, especially when the games get most important and most critical, and especially Brush, perhaps, on a mode such as Clan Blitz, which we'll be going to for our 3rd set. I mean, this mode has a tendency to get incredibly chaotic, especially when trying to scramble and get the clams to the right person's hands.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to touch on there. And to Popgun's point initially, not being able to close it out, the idea of staying cool, calm, and collected under pressure isn't just when you're losing. It's also when you have the lead. It's when you're trying to stay ahead. And so as we move into Clan Blitz and you talk about that clam economy, trying to move around the map, trying to get all of those clams together when you don't quite have that coordination, when you have all the nerves going, when you have all of that energy in your VC, that's when it's the hardest. So going into game 3, or set 3, sorry, being tied 1-1, having an opportunity at taking this win, and you got to deal now with the ultimate test of coordination. They have a long hill and a long climb ahead of them.
You see the maps on your screen now. We're starting on Inkplot, then Scorch, then Museum for this week's matches. And we've seen a handful of these maps obviously pop up in competition already, but we haven't seen a lot of ballpoint be played in a lot of these maps. We haven't seen all the time a lot of Wiper, if Isabel decides to go back to that Wiper especially. Popgun, what stands out to you here? What are you really looking for out of 0 deaths to try to take this one out?
Well, it really comes down to Isabel. We keep thinking, oh, they're going to use Tetras, and then they use Wipers, and then it feels like they just use Tetras when it just, I don't know. I hope 0 deaths wins so that we can get somebody from them on the interview that asks them what is their mindset to figuring out when they use Wipers and when they use Tetras. But yeah, if it goes to a game 3, Ballpoint really, really strong on that map. So if you're Nightmare, you want to win this one, I think you got to find a way to win the first 2. The last point I'll make, the reason Nightmare was able to win that last set, they didn't have a huge hill that they had to come back from. They didn't get blown out in the first minutes in those 2 games that they won. Flounder, forget that. The other 2 games, they kept it close long enough. Just keep them in the ballpark. And if they can just do better on their openings here, they'll be fine. But again, I don't want to go to that museum map if I'm Nightmare.
Gotta open up strong here if you're Nightmare, because I imagine similar to having, decent sleep, right? And being able to actually set yourself up for success. If you have the strong 4 minutes or the strong 7 hours or 8 hours of sleep a night, you're probably not going to come up with very many nightmares here, Brush. What does Nightmare have to do to try to disrupt things, especially early on?
Yeah, I mean, it's about finding those opportunities, and that starts from the weapon select screen. And so we're having all of these conversations. I mean, we talk about Isabel, but it's really from both sides. Because once you're loaded in, and once you see, the double splash, double, oh my gosh, double
machine.
Machine comp. Thank you. As machine doesn't come out of my mouth. Like, it's just about playing the game, and it's about finding the ways to exploit your opponents. So if you're not having those discussions beforehand, you gotta be having it during the set. You gotta be finding the ways to adapt as you go.
Really quick, 1 sentence. Popgun, you said 0 deaths. Why?
I agree with Brush. It's just about playing the game. In 0 deaths, I feel like we'll play the game better.
Brush, prediction?
Popgun said it for me.
All right, sending it back over to casters here for the conclusion. Which team is going to be able to get their first win in the Resurgence League?
All right, we are back for set 3 here of 0 deaths versus Nightmare. Ooh, Fusion. I mean, the analysts, they broke that down pretty nicely for us. How are you feeling going into this 3rd set?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, I guess, maps and stuff, it may be leaning a little bit towards 0 deaths, and including the experience 0 deaths has in the recent placings, I think 0 deaths certainly looks very strong. Of course, I still did put Nightmare on the prediction sheet. I'm going to have to stick with my guns here. Nightmare is going to have a lot of work cut out for them if they're going to win this set. I don't know how well... or I don't know exactly what they're going to go with in terms of how they play or the weapons they're going to go with, because they switched them around a bit. But that 52 did seem pretty nice to see, and it seemed to match up very well into 0 deaths. But here we go into Clam Blitz on Inkblot Art Academy. Which of these teams will be taking home a win in the Inktv Resurgence League? We will find that out here. We do see that 52 gal and the exact same thing that 0 deaths has been bringing out all season.
Yeah, 0 deaths bringing out the same comp that we last saw from them, and they're actually not going back to the Wiper. So Isabel, as we see Isabel here, still sticking with those Tetras. From Isabel's point of view here, we get to see Isabel actually pushing up very, very aggressively all the way into Nightmare's plat and sitting on the bats, maybe gonna potentially get some jump-ins, but there are 3 members down on her team, and she's actually able to make a ball all by herself, open up the basket, and completely make the members of Nightmare have to look back. But I love that there are still 2 members of Nightmare pushed up here. They're not letting go of this area that they're holding.
I'm really liking how Nightmare played it, because Isabel just barely found those clams. She had a hard time getting it and just got it right before Nightmare was able to get a push of their own. But that push itself is looking a lot weaker. Nightmare just barely managed to scrape by, get that in time, and that's going to just put a penalty on the board, give a power claim back to 0 deaths. Now 0 deaths has a member advantage here. Toyo Ben moving up on that right side, Isabel on the left, waiting for that grab to expire. Isabel trying to get in against that machine. They're not going to be able to do it. All that chip damage is not going to be enough. The Inkjet does find a pick, and it's going to be fully even here as both teams are going to continue to fight, but Phoenix finds a couple here, and that's going to let 0 deaths get their first huge push of the game, bring the counter down all the way below 50. Now Phoenix trying to get some more clams over on that left side, trying to get a little sneak around the left as they try and move in behind Isabel. 2 members go down. The timer is still ticking down. The clams count all the way down. What am I saying? They're going all the way down to 11. Phoenix is somehow still alive. What the hell? Anyways, 0 deaths nearly knocks it out there, but Nightmare just barely hangs on to this first game, and Nightmare is going to have a huge mountain to climb.
Fusion, those were my thoughts exactly there when all that was happening. Phoenix able to get clams in and then also get a jump in, get some picks while they were at it, and just continue chaos. Speaking of chaos here, Isabel able to get some picks here on the right side, and Phoenix is already pushed up into Nightmare's plat. Nightmare does not have any specials yet ready for defense. You could see they're trying to paint around their plat, trying to get ready for this push that it looks like Zero Deaths is getting ready for themselves. Zero Deaths has all this mid control. They have all of this yellow paint in mid, and as there's a trade happening back and forth, I mean, this is looking a little bit hairy here for Nightmare. They're just trying to stay back and make sure that they stay alive, and it actually works out well for them. They were able to take down 2 members of Zero Deaths while they were at it. They just have to figure out how to get out of their plat, how to get back into mid, because Zero Deaths is guarding this so well.
This is looking a lot like the first set, if I do say so myself. Isabel and Storm moving up along with Phoenix. Those strikes do come out. Without a power clam online, Zero Death's push isn't really going to go anywhere, so this may just end up in multiple members down. Miner does find themselves staring down a ballpoint in a Tetra. Storm finds 2, a third one, and Zero Deaths is looking very dominant this game as more clams come in, as Zero Deaths looks for that knockout. Here comes 1 power clam. They're going to need like 10 more clams online if they want to knock it out here, but Nightmare does manage to hang on to most of the plat. Phoenix on that right side along with that Inkjet and a Reef Slider are going to finish off the rest of Nightmare, but Nightmare is not out of it yet. The clams were not by the basket in the nick of time.
Zero Death still has control of Nightmare's plat. Phoenix here going to use this Booyah Bomb to Booyah at Nightmare's bats. You see that there's a couple members of Nightmare trying to regroup there and just use that to shut them down. Luckily, though, for Nightmare, they are able to finally get into mid. This is what they've been looking for this whole time, just at least get into mid. We saw Joe there doing one of the famous Joe Sharks as Joe's just kind of waiting for their team to regroup, but then maybe catch some members of Zero Deaths off of their spawn. Joe is able to do that, and a really nice tri-strike coming out around Joe to just enable what is happening here. That is allowing Nightmare here to finally push up, score in a power clam, and take control of Zero's plat.
I really like what Nightmare did there. Joe pushed up onto the plat, survived with that splash wall when things were getting hairy. The Booyah Bomb, along with the Ink Strikes, came in. Joe helping one of their teammates finishing off. Not a massive push for Zero Deaths or for Nightmare, but that's going to be a lot of points on the board. They do end up going 3 down, and just a single push from Zero Deaths could spell the end of this game, so they're going to have to be very careful. They have been doing a better job watching the bats. That's the area that the Ink Rail goes to so far, but they're going to need to watch a lot more than that if they're going to win this game as we head into overtime, possibly.
Nightmare was able to at least make a power climb for themselves, but with only 1 member up left alive and Zero Deaths pushing forward to score in their power climb to open up the basket, so there is no overtime at all. Zero Deaths there securing that first game of set 3 for themselves.
Yeah, Zero Deaths leaving nothing up to chance. Isabel moving in with that power claim before Nightmare has a chance to push. That may have been a risky play in and of itself, because if you open the basket, you give the other team an extra power claim in overtime, but thankfully a claim came in from either Toyoben or Phoenix after the timer hit 0, and that was enough to give Zero Deaths the win there. They looked very dominant that game. Nightmare did end up striking back, but Nightmare now on their last legs here. This is their last shot to win a set in the Inktv League. Zero Deaths looking for their first win. They have taken their first game win so far, as they nearly secured this match win. Anyways, how are you feeling going forward into Scorch Gorge Clam Blitz? I'm thinking this is also a very good Inkjet map. I look at this and I see Inkjet, Inkjet, Inkjet.
I do too, and especially with the way that the Storm's Inkjet paired with the way that Isabel has been. It almost seems like Isabel is just following Storm around and is able to just instantly take advantage of when Storm is able to Inkjet. If you're the other team, there's a Tetra running at you and an Inkjet also running at you at the same time, you know. What do? You just have to back up and try and stay alive. And on Scorch Gorge, I could really see them enabling that play style here and just doing really good with it.
Yeah, we saw those constant flanks coming out from Zero Deaths, but there's not too much room to flank on this map. It's either the Greats or nothing. So if Nightmare's able to lock that down, that could be bad for Zero Deaths. But of course, a ballpoint on those Greats is very dangerous. So both teams have a lot to look out for here as the battle is going to begin on the top mid of Scorch Gorge zones. Isabel's going to sneak behind that crab. Yep, there she goes, getting one pick, gets a second in a huge opening already. Only 15 seconds in for Zero Deaths as they try and move towards the basket. The splash wall is going to be a bit of a hindrance and slow that push down, but the power claim is still going to find its way in.
Immediately, Zero Deaths able to open up the basket and get their score past 60 right now, past 50, and paired with the Booyah Bomb, Phoenix here pushing up through the left side of Nightmare's spawn. This aggression from Zero Deaths, they are in it to win it right now as they continue to score claims in the basket.
Yeah, the crab comes out defensively, but still, Zero Deaths manages to stay alive and give jumps back into the middle of the map. Not losing that is massive. They've been playing that game so well. Even if they go multiple down on a push, they're staying alive. We've seen that throughout the set, including on tower control. Isabel over that top mid continuing to fight. They have an inkling that she's there, but they're going to need to take her out, and she and Storm are going to just lock that down, give way for Toyoben to use that crab, and that's going to be even more difficult for Nightmare to move into mid now as trades are coming out on both sides, but it all ends up in Zero Death's favor.
Yeah, Nightmare keeps trying to set up in mid. You can see they're trying to figure out if they want to go the left route or the right route throughout mid. What is going to work best for them to set up and make an opening for themselves? But Zero Deaths has complete control of mid constantly. It almost seems like they have just eyes on all areas of mid, and they have eyes on all areas of where Nightmare is going. Zero Deaths here able to open up the basket once again and continue to take down members of Nightmare, paired with another power clam coming in from Storm. The score for Zero Deaths is all the way down to 8. They are not letting down.
And that last clam comes in at just... I didn't even see that clam on board, but Zero Deaths does manage to finish it off. That second set, not an indication of how this last one would go. And Zero Deaths is going to take their first set of the Inktv League, closing out against Nightmare 2-1. That first and third set from them looked extremely dominant. The second set, Nightmare felt like they had a little bit more footing. Maybe they were able to get the best of them in terms of like team composition, but it feels like as soon as, the Inkjet was required, mobile team compositions work better. It felt like Zero Deaths was the one coming out on top. So props to both teams. Nightmare looking to prove themselves in the league, and I feel like they certainly have, because no one expected them to be even close to this level. So great job to them. Zero Deaths already recognized as a very high level team, and meta definers in their own right are going to take that first victory for themselves.
Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and see what our analysts have to say about that last set and those last 3 sets that we watched.
It's Zero Deaths that'll pull out ahead here of Nightmare, and even despite these anime protagonists coming into the league, Popgun, Zero Deaths was just too strong today, and it's largely off of one of the players we highlighted in the pre-show.
Yeah, well, the one player we highlighted in the pre-show and then we didn't talk much about because, Ballpoint and Tetras and Wiper are unique and different. But yes, sometimes it is the boring standard weapons that make the difference. And Phoenix is the MVP of that Clam Blitz set. They were getting so many splats while still focusing on the objective and locking down key slots throughout the entire course, not just the Art Academy, but the Scorched Gorge map as well. So yeah, Phoenix really stepped up in that last game and was really a difference maker for them.
And look, even still, Nightmare, you saw in that last replay, had decent setup, right? Throw out the wall, throw out the Booyah Bomb, the whale to continue pushing people back. But at the end of the day, they just couldn't fully find all of the advantages they needed to brush around things like that ballpoint range, around Phoenix, who was playing the machine with pinpoint accuracy, and all of these sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, the flanking playstyle works great until it doesn't. And thankfully, being able to find those off angles is going to find them the win. There was a couple moments there where just the range from the crab alone on the side of Nightmare, the pseudo ballpoint, as I like to think of it sometimes, shut down opportunities. The difference, though, is that Zero Deaths was able to keep throwing themselves at the wall, keep finding the opportunities, keep forcing things to happen, and eventually the crab is in charge and you have the ticket through. But there were a couple moments there for sure where I was positive Nightmare was able to say, you're on the side, I'm going to ignore you, let's just keep moving forward and make something happen.
And look, the other thing here too, right, is that we can talk a little bit more about Nightmare, who still Popgun had an incredibly strong showing in the qualifiers and in the league themselves. They took games here or there, they made things competitive, so on, and they still put on one heck of a performance.
Yeah, there's nothing bad to take away from this from Nightmare. Yes, they didn't win any matches, but they still showed plenty of upside to have in the future. As we're looking at the NFL draft right now, there's a lot of this player's got potential and upside. Okay, that could mean that could be really horrible tomorrow. But for at least from where Nightmare was before this league even started, I would have to believe they had no idea they were even going to qualify for the league or have us talking about them week after week after week. So there's a lot of good things that they can learn here, and I hope they keep grinding and improve because there is potential for high growth in the future.
And Brush, this is also kind of our send-off for Zero Deaths as well, who, to this point was kind of a newer roster formed together in somewhat part for this league, right? And looks like they're going to continue sticking together as a team of friends that continue playing. I think they're on to do great things in Europe.
Yeah, and I mean, team of friends, I think is a great key word there, is a great descriptor. I mean, the teams that are able to stick together for as long as times and become household names are these teams that are able to joke around and have fun and say, look, we didn't make it past this stage of the Inktv Resurgence League, but hey, we're going to keep grinding, we're going to keep practicing, we're going to keep scrimming, keep finding the new angles, finding the new ways to take on the Starbursts and the Alliance Rogues. And as the European scene continues to grow and continues to look stronger, which traditionally I think wasn't always the case, at least in the public eye, they're going to become the number one contender to Alliance Rogue one day, just because they're on that side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, and of course, it'll be exciting to watch them continue to progress because this is really only the beginning for them, right? As we talk about them getting themselves situated as a team and moving on through with that. And to talk a little bit more about it, Toyobin is standing by with Rissa and Fusion for a brief little interview coming off of Zero Deaths win in the Inktv Resurgence.
Welcome back into the Inktv Resurgence League. Toyobin, we are joined by Toyobin of Zero Deaths. How are you feeling after that victory against Nightmare, your first victory in the Resurgence League?
Satisfied. We went into this with pretty low expectations, I dare to say, because we didn't even expect to qualify. And this day, or today, marks the day, 1 month anniversary of our team. We are very new. We went into this with pretty much zero practice, so we had very low expectations. And yeah, I mean, we've managed to prove that we can keep up with a lot of teams on this level without months of practice that some others have. So I think, yeah, we're pretty satisfied.
Excuse me for 1 second. Well, we are back with Toyoben of Zero Deaths to give us a wonderful interview. How are you feeling after after that set, Toyoben?
Satisfied. We went into this tournament with low expectations. We didn't even first expect to qualify, and we were surprised that we got this far. So, and like all of our players were dreaming for a long time to be part of an event like this, and just to be part of this, we already felt like we achieved most of what we wanted. And so yeah, we went into this with nothing to lose, just trying to have fun. Like we knew the times weren't the best for us. Like it's 2 a.m. for us right now, and it's hard for all the EU teams. But we definitely wanted to play in this just because we know how cool the Inktv events are. Yeah, so we all wanted to play in a big league like this, in a big event like this. And for a team that has only existed like for 1 month right now, like we've announced our team just 1 month ago, exactly 1 month ago. And for that little practice, I think we performed decently well, and we've proven that we can keep up with most teams in this league. But yeah, I'm gonna enjoy the rest of the league from the spectator ranks.
Yeah, you guys absolutely proved that you have the talent to be in this league as well as compete with the highest level teams around. And props to you staying up and staying strong far past midnight, because US times for EU tournaments, or sorry, for EU players in tournaments can be a little bit rough. You all seem like a very fun team to be around. So what exactly changed between that second set and the third set? The first and third set, you all seemed extremely dominant. The second set, it felt like a little bit different. What changed?
So for TC, I think TC is our best mode right now, but just because we managed to play this one the most. Like I said, we don't have a lot of practice. And we mostly played the TC maps first in scrims, so I think that's all it comes down to. And then for zones, we had a lot of trouble just adapting to the playstyle for zones. And the only zones map that we are good on, that you also saw in the set, was Flounder Heights. So yeah, Hagglefish and Mako we always struggle with, some of our worst maps. But yeah, TC our best mode probably, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Rissa,
Yeah,
do
looking
you
at
have
the
any questions?
Yeah, I really want to ask. I'm going to ask this for Popgun in particular. I'm wondering, we saw that you guys started Isabel with the Wiper initially and then switch over to the Tetras. I'm really wondering what the thought process was there. Was it just a comfort pick, or was it something about Nightmare's play style in particular that made that switch up happen?
I think for Isabel, it's comfort pick or comfort thing, and also just that Tetras are not that good on TC. I think like everybody knows pretty much that TC is the worst mode for Tetras. So we were always thinking what other weapon she should play there. And yeah, she's been playing Viper and Stamper for a while now. So yeah, one of those. And yeah, Viper worked out. So
You all have done a great job at kind of finding your stride and your identity for only a month into your team's existence. How does it kind of feel? It felt like you guys were kind of creating a brick wall. When you're pushing, you're getting in between the enemy team and like the tower, for example. Perhaps not like the most aggressive team, more of like a bait and punish play style. How has developing as a team over the past month felt, and what else have you tried in terms of both like how you play and or weapons that you've been running?
okay, so since the start, it's been pretty weird for me and Phoenix, especially to adapt.
Yeah.
Because you might know Storm and Isabel from New Meta, and which is a completely different playstyle that they have as a team. Like the Brush and Tetras, it's just super fast playstyle. And Isabel was always like telling us that she wants to play fast. So we try to adapt to Isabel's playstyle. And yeah, especially for me as a former junior main coming from Splatoon 2, I was stuck in the Splatoon 2 junior playstyle for very long, and had to really switch up my playstyle to this new game, and especially then to this very fast comp. And yeah, we also, like me on Neosplash for a very long time, and trying to go in very aggressively as well, which is why you might have seen me on the QR Neosplash build sometimes. But yeah, we just try a lot of things right now, and Isabel wants to try Neo Sploosh as well, which we might or might not try.
Well, you all seem to have found something that definitely works, and I wish you the best of luck developing more strategies and stuff in the future. Congrats, and thank you so much for your interview, Toyo Ben. We are going to toss it over to the analysts for our halftime show.
Now, look, everything I said about Zero Deaths potentially going on to do fantastic things, the reality here is I don't think you're gonna do it with Neo Sploosh, but you can try, certainly. Popgun, bring us home. What do you think about that interview?
I like the fact that they mentioned towards the end there how they were kind of stuck using Junior in Splatoon 2 and how it feels kind of nice to do something different. I wonder how they're going to feel a year from now when they've been doing the same thing for a long period of time. It's just a different coat of paint. But I'm happy that all the Junior players that are still playing the game at least feel like there's something different for them, at least in the initial part of this game coming out.
Brush, can we help you?
I don't know. I'm just